Welcome to Digital Learning, an initiative of Directorate of Collegiate Education, Government of Karnataka. Eloquentia 1 is the general English textbook prescribed for first semester BSc, Bengaluru City University. The Model Millionaire, a short story by Oscar Wilde, is one of the lessons included in the general English text. This is the third session pertaining to the lesson. In the previous two sessions, we have dealt in detail with the author, the purpose of the author, and also the contextual interpretation of the lesson was done. And this is the third session. I shall be hosting this session. I'm Nandana NG, Assistant Professor of English, Government First Grade College, Malleshwaram, Bengaluru. The contents of this session are learning objectives, session outcomes, recap of the previous knowledge, plot of the story, exposition, rising action, climax, falling action and resolution, characterization, recapitulation, comprehension, multiple choice questions. We shall go in detail as to what they are. The learning objectives of this session. Learning objectives refer to what is it that you can look ahead, or what are the objectives, aims, intentions of this session. To review the characteristics of the literary elements of the plot. Every story usually is made up of these elements, or these can be defined as the elements that make up a story. Not necessarily that all stories should have it, but every story has it. And the better you understand the elements of a story, the better you will understand the story. And we shall be going in that order. Let me just switch on my system. First, we shall be going in this order. What is an exposition? What is a rising action? What is climax? What is falling action? And what is resolution? So session outcome, at the end of the session, the students will be able to identify plot analysis in the short story Modern Millionaire. He will also be able to identify the exposition, rising action, climax, falling action and resolution, and identify the relevance of language and literature. Let us try to recapitulate the entire story. In the previous session, the contextual interpretation of the entire lesson was done. So to recap, Huey Erskine, our protagonist or our hero, is a handsome and kind young man, but he is poor and has no job. It seems to be Lady Destiny also is not interested in him. Well, he is at the beginning of the story, he is in love with Laura Merton, the daughter of a retired colonel. Laura also is a good-hearted girl. She is a sweet girl. She too genuinely loves Huey Erskine. Laura's father agrees to the marriage only if Huey can bring 10,000 pounds as a dowry. You cannot think of Laura's father as a villain. As a father to a doting daughter, he would want the best for his daughter's life. So maybe he wanted to see if the man is capable of earning something. How do you entrust your daughter to a man who is not even able to earn something to maintain the same level of, living? Maybe that might be the thought process of Laura's father. So this was the initial part of the story. And later that afternoon, Huey visits his friend Alan Trevor, a painter who is working on the portrait of a beggar. And when Alan steps out of the studio, Huey looks at the beggar and is so moved by his plight. He feels sorry for the beggar model and secretly gives him a sovereign or a gold coin. See, look at this important thing. A small gesture of Huey giving money to a beggar, how it changes his destiny. Later, Trevor tells Huey that the beggar is not a real beggar, but Baron Hausberg, one of the richest men in Europe. The Baron was posing as a beggar for the painting. The Baron is impressed by Huey's generosity despite his own poverty. As a reward, Baron Hausberg sends Huey a check of 10,000 pounds. With the money, Huey marries Laura, and the story ends with happiness and surprise. Now let us look at the characters in detail. Huey Erskine, he is our protagonist. Protagonist always refers to the lead character, positive, somebody who takes the story forward, and the entire story revolves around this character. So the protagonist here is Huey Erskine. He is the main character and emotional center of the story. He is handsome, good looking, and added to it, kind, virtuous, generous. He has all the good qualities, but also he is poor. Honest, and he genuinely cares for others. And to marry Laura, He wants to marry Laura. He genuinely loves her, but he lacks the required 10,000 pounds dowry that he was expected to pay. This was the custom of those times. I'm reminded of a play, The Way of the World, again said during those times. This again clearly shows, the play Way of the World clearly shows how two people, they are in love and how they try to get married, but then societal customs, they in fact draw up an agreement between themselves, wherein they, in fact they say this should be the amount, I'll not be doing this work after marriage, etc. So that's why I keep insisting marriage is not always necessarily romance for that kind. Here we can see how Huey was compelled to give 10,000 pounds as dowry. The story follows his personal growth, his moral choices, and eventual success. The other characters in the story are the antagonist. Always remember, protagonist has a antagonist, that is the his opposite. Usually in stories, the villain is the antagonist, but here, tragically, any person or a human being is not the antagonist. It is society's expectations and poverty is the antagonist. There is no traditional villain. Instead, the antagonist is a social force, that is poverty. Huey's financial status prevents him from marrying Laura. The social norms. The colonel's demand for a dowry reflects the materialistic expectations of Victorian society. The internal conflict that we get to see is, conflict is when things are at loggerheads. So what is the conflict here? The internal conflict that Huey has within himself. Huey's own insecurity and helplessness add to the struggle. Like, for example, his heart wants to marry Laura, while his mind tells him you don't have the money required to marry her. This conflict, this being at loggerheads with his own head and heart, this is the internal conflict. The other characters in the story are the supporting characters. Alan Trevor, Huey's friend, a successful painter, he helps reveal the identity of the beggar. In fact, we can say that if not for Alan Trevor, the entire thing would not have ended on a positive note. And then Baron Hausberg, a wealthy man posing as a beggar, he rewards Huey's kindness with 10,000 pounds. Colonel Merton, Laura's father, he represents societal pressure. He is not a bad man. He is not a villain as such. But as a father who expects the best for his daughter, he is pressurized by the society of those times. And as a result, he asks, or he orders Huey to give 10,000 pounds as dowry. Now, observe this graph. Every short story usually has these elements. Exposition refers to where the characters are introduced, the setting, and the conflict. Here in the course of the story, we shall see what is exposition and how the exposition goes to rising action. Some sort of action is there, events which increase the conflict. And as it keeps on increasing, it proceeds to the end point, that is the highest point, that is known as the climax, the highest point in climax conflict. After conflict, after the climax, there is a falling action, that is the events that take place after the climax. And in the end, there is a resolution, or what happens afterward. So the whatever happens from exposition to resolution is the story, if I have to put it that way. So let us see the entire story, Modern Millionaire, through these points. Please look at the picture once again. Exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. What is exposition? We are introduced to Huey Erskine, a charming but poor young man. He loves Laura Merton, the daughter of a retired colonel. The colonel refuses the match until Huey can provide 10,000 pounds as dowry. Huey is worried as he has no way to earn such a large sum. So as we saw in the exposition, it introduces us to the character, the setting, that is Victorian era, and what seems to be the problem. So the problem here is Huey's marriage and the 10,000 pounds required for the marriage. The rising action happens when Huey visits his artist friend Alan Trevor, who is painting a beggar. The beggar is dressed in rags and looks very poor. Huey, feeling sorry for him, secretly gives him a sovereign, that is a gold coin equivalent to 1 pound. Huey leaves unaware of the beggar's real identity. So from exposition, the rising action is the phase where Huey Erskine comes to visit his friend, and where in the studio of Alan Trevor, he gets to see a beggar. Moved by his plight, he gives him one sovereign. So how does that take the story further? In the climax, Alan later reveals the truth. The beggar is actually Baron Hausberg, one of the richest men in Europe. Huey is shocked and embarrassed because he could not identify him, and is embarrassed because for such a rich man he gave him one gold sovereign, thinking him to be poor. Now he is worried that what if the old man is angry with him? What if he takes him to be a person with other intentions? So these are the thoughts in his mind. The falling action. After the climax, what is the falling action? Huey regrets his action, fearing it might have seemed silly or insulting. In fact, the entire night we can see in the story that he's unable to sleep. He is tossing and turning because he's worried. What will the rich man have thought of him? However, contrary to Huey's, fears and concerns, the Baron was impressed by Huey's genuine generosity. And in the resolution or at the end, how do things fall into place? The next day, Huey receives a check for 10,000 pounds from Baron Hausberg. With the money, he's finally able to marry Laura. The story ends on a joyful note, celebrating kindness and love. So we saw how the story proceeds from exposition, the exposition of how Huey is introduced, and the rising action, Huey going to Alan Trevor's studio, giving a coin to the beggar. The climax is when Huey comes to know the real identity of the beggar, and in the falling action, his embarrassment, his worry about what is going to happen. In the resolution, he receives money from the Baron for 10,000 pounds, with which he is able to marry Laura. Now let us try to go answer the questions for pertaining to this lesson. After every lesson and poem in the textbook, the comprehension unit consists of three phases. The first unit is tested in the exam for 1 or 2 marks. You need to answer the following in a phrase or sentence each. The second main consists of questions which you need to answer in 1 page. That will be marked for 5 marks. And in the last main, questions are provided which are known as essay type questions, which you need to answer for 2 pages, which are for 10 marks. Now let us go for the first main. Answer the following in a phrase or a sentence each. The first question: what is Huey Erskine's main financial issue? The answer is Huey is poor and unemployed with no stable income or profession, making it difficult for him to support himself or marry. Who is Laura Merton? The answer is Laura Merton is the daughter of a retired colonel and Huey Erskine's beloved, whom he wishes to marry. What condition does Laura's father set to Huey to marry Laura? Laura's father insists that Huey must have 10,000 pounds to prove his financial stability before allowing the marriage. Who is the beggar model actually revealed to be? The beggar model is revealed to be Baron Hausberg, one of the richest men in Europe, posing for a portrait. How does Huey show kindness to the beggar model? Huey, feeling sorry for the beggar, gives him a sovereign, that is a gold coin equivalent to 1 pound, even though he himself is poor. What wedding present does Huey receive from the beggar model? Baron Hausberg gives Huey a check for 10,000 pounds, enable him to marry Laura. So to recapitulate, exposition: Huey Erskine, a poor but good youth, loves Laura Merton but cannot marry her due to lack of money. Rising action happens when Huey visits his friend Alan's studio and out of sympathy gives a gold coin to an old beggar posing for a painting. The climax happens when Alan reveals that the beggar is actually Baron Hausberg, one of the richest men in Europe. The falling action is when Huey feels embarrassed about giving money to a millionaire in disguise. And the resolution happens when Baron Hausberg sends Huey a $10,000 check as a reward for his kindness, enabling his marriage to Laura. The themes that are prominently displayed in the story is true kindness is rewarded and appearances can be misleading. Let us go for the multiple choice question answer session. What is introduced to the exposition of the story? The options given are the secret identity of the beggar, Huey's friendship with Baron Hausberg, Huey's love for Laura and his lack of money, or Huey's plan to become a painter? The answer is option C, Huey's love for Laura and his lack of money. Which event is part of the rising action? Huey receives a check. Huey gives a sovereign to a beggar. Laura's father allows the marriage. Baron Hausberg attends the wedding. Definitely the answer is option B. Huey gives a sovereign to a beggar. What is the climax of the story? Huey proposes to Laura. The beggar asks for more money. The beggar is revealed to be a millionaire. Alan finishes the painting. The answer is option C. The beggar is revealed to be a millionaire. What happens during the falling action? Huey tries to paint a portrait. Huey is praised for his generosity. Huey feels embarrassed about giving the sovereign. Laura leaves Huey, and the answer is option C. Huey feels embarrassed about giving the sovereign because when he realizes that he has given a gold coin to one of the richest men in Europe, he feels embarrassed. The last question, what themes does the story's resolution highlight? The options provided are wealth is more important than love, appearances can be deceiving, and kindness is rewarded. Only the rich deserve happiness. Or the last option, art has no value in society. Answer is option B, appearances can be deceiving and kindness is rewarded. Suggested reading. The Necklace by Gay de Maupassant. It is a story about a woman who borrows a necklace for a fancy event only to lose it and face unexpected consequences, highlighting themes of pride and deception of appearances. I would suggest the students to definitely go through these stories because they're all related to the themes that we have just discussed. A Retrieved Reformation by O. Henry, a short story about a reformed safecracker who risks his new life and identity to save a child, illustrating themes of redemption and the power of love and honesty. To Build a Fire by Jack London, it's a gripping story about a man's struggle for survival in the Yukon wilderness, emphasizing the themes of human versus nature and the importance of knowledge and preparedness. The references used for this session. Thank you.